Hey everyone, so I thought I'd do a video based on range of motion. And when I talk about range of motion, I'm talking about your muscles and your joints working together to provide a movement pattern. It could be anything you do outside or at home or even in the gym, which is pretty important to know. There are a lot of misconceptions about range of motion, and especially when it comes to pain relief. As you know, I'm big on like the path of least resistance. If you're unaware of your body, then if you want to do something, eventually your body will find a way to do it, whether it's through engagement of muscles or whether it's through compensation of the kinetic chain. Now, it's important to know that range of motion, like having good range of motion, doesn't exactly mean pain relief, but lack of range of motion is associated with like pain. So if there is short and tension in certain areas, then you're more likely to get tightness and pain in that area or somewhere else as the kinetic chain. If there's a tight area, another area could be pulled as well. That's the beauty of our joints and our muscles working together. We adapt to what we do. So I thought like I would apply it in the way of like toe touch. So everyone should aspire to be able to touch the toes. Now there's many different ways of touching your toes based on different compensations or based on range of motion or like engagement of muscles. Alright, so from those 3 toe touches I did, the first one was bending my knees to make myself come down. Of course, that is more hamstring dominated, and usually when someone's like quite tight there in the backs of their legs, they'll bend their knees to touch the ground. Nothing wrong with it as long as they're not causing too much pain in themselves. The other one was I was using more of my thoracic spine to come down, so again, pressure to the back, and I'm getting much of a curve. Usually it's quite common when someone's got upper cross syndrome, or they're not used to flexing their hips or haven't trained their hips to flex that way, or they lack muscle engagement to be able to do that. The other one was using a little bit of my lumbar spine and a little bit of thoracic, but still I was able to hip hinge, and then the rest of the way I came down using my spine. So even though I did use my spine, I was still able to get my hips to hinge over a little bit more. So that's the difference when it comes to range of motion. Again, that last one applied less pressure than the other 2 for me. That's a big thing to note. For me, that one felt better. But of course, everyone's different, and I'm going to just show you the differences when it comes to range of motion, why it's important to understand the whole aspect of range of motion and not just go if I can get them to flex more, they're going to have less pain. That doesn't necessarily ring true. There's lots to take in consideration. Alright, so on the whiteboard, range of motion. So these are the systems you need to be aware of when it comes to range of motion. So energy system, of course, if you're not feeding yourself correctly, or if you're not feeling too well, or like don't have enough energy to supply your muscles with being able to do the work they can, of course that system is going to hinder the range of motion in some way, shape or form. That's where nutrition can be a big part when it comes to inflammation as well. So if you're inflamed, you're more likely to be tight in certain areas. So this is pretty important. Skeletal system. Sometimes at birth we can have slight defects in our skeletal structure, but in most cases when it comes to the skeletal system, we pretty much adapt to what we do. So just think of your work and that. If your muscles are lengthening one area, they'll be shortening somewhere else. And sometimes with that, skeletal system shifts. It could be hips, knees, ankles, spine, So we definitely need range of motion from the skeletal system, but then again, looking at the big picture, has the muscular system shifted certain dynamics in our posture? And that is pretty important. So when you got good posture, there is a base relative range of motion with the skeletal system. So you don't want to get to the point where you're getting so much range of motion you just gone from muscle to ligaments, tendons, and then straight bone on bone. You don't want that. So there's relative range of motion to be aware of too. So very important. Muscular system, okay? This is like perfect example is like some of the compensated toe touches I did. Obviously needing to hip hinge to get down, I need my glutes to be quite active to be able to help me hinge over. Some people who have inactive glutes will have trouble with that. muscular awareness and knowing what muscles can contract in which area is quite important. I always say it to all the people I work with, muscle-mind connection is huge, and sometimes we need to kind of adapt that into our workouts to get better muscle activation, and it helps the movement pattern over time, and it can lead to pain relief as well. Because if you're working the muscles you're targeting, then the muscles that are overactive won't dominate so much if you have that problem. Central nervous system, another one that's linked up with the muscle-mind connection. If you're not used to doing a certain range or a certain exercise, then your body's going to be like, what the hell is happening here? You got to remember that your mind and your muscles, you're sending signals throughout, and if you haven't done something before, this will be happening a lot, and it takes a while to adapt to, and once you got it, muscle-mind connection gets a lot better. But if you haven't done something before, this needs to start working. Well, it will start to adapt over time. If you're not using it, you will lose it, and that plays a big part in these. So with your range of motion, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. These systems are very important for that range of motion. To break it down really simply, when you're starting out something, you're going through a phase of unconsciously incompetent. So like if I want to touch my toes, I'm going to find a way to do it anyway. Going from, okay, consciously incompetent, I know I need to touch my toes, I know that I need a hip hinge, so I've got to learn that pattern. So I'm consciously incompetent. Consciously competent is I'm starting to hip hinge, my muscles are being more aware, the signals from my brain to my muscle systems are working, I've got that energy to be able to provide that movement and effectively. And then from here, I'm consciously competent. So you're able to do all this and activate all this without having to think about it. It's like when you go for your license and drive your car. So as a student, all of this stuff, you're learning, you're adapting, you're really focused, and then when you get to be an adult and quite experienced driver, it is less thinking. So hopefully that was helpful. One thing to note though, range of motion, like I said earlier, doesn't mean pain relief. So you can bring an arm back as far as you like and get as much range as you like, but you can still have pain. Sometimes pain can be referred from somewhere else. So if you've got relative range of motion and you still got pain somewhere else, then you need to look at the whole big picture rather than try to bend your body like a pretzel. So when you apply range of motion, you want to look at joint control, muscular activation, and muscular awareness. So when I get someone, for example, to do a push-up, ideally, if I'm going wide grip, I want them to feel their chest. If I'm getting someone to do deadlifts, I want them to feel their glutes. Same with hip thrusts, I want them to feel their glutes. If they're not feeling their glutes, they're probably feeling their back or their quads. So I need to work on ways to get them to work their glutes. And sometimes they might have perfect range of motion in raising their hips. That's where it comes down to, okay, central nervous system and muscular system working together, because their skeletal system is actually lifting up into hip extension quite well. They just need to work on squeezing their glutes. So sometimes you get the cases. So if they are that case and their hips are going good extension and they're not getting good glute activation, maybe I need to apply stress like somewhere else to help those glutes activate, if that all makes sense. So just remember, range of motion, don't need to bend like a pretzel, don't need to keep cranking yourself back. It's all about these systems working together. Cool.